Today's lesson is the red telephone box, a British icon's fight for survival. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And my name is Helen.
And today we're going to talk about the iconic red telephone box of Britain. And, of course, when you see tourist photos of the UK, you see London Bridge, you see Big Ben, you see the London Eye, and you see the taxi drivers, but also you see pictures of those red phone boxes. They are iconic of the UK, but they are disappearing. And, of course, they have this fight for survival. Hopefully they can survive, but, people aren't really using them so much anymore.
Right. And before, we also looked a bit at the history of these red telephone boxes. We saw who designed them and the modifications that were made before they became seen all over the country, because initially they were heavy and they were found only in London. But after the modifications were made and the phone boxes became smaller and lighter, they were established or set up all over the UK.
That's right. So after that, of course, we've got many decades where they were spreading out all through the country, and they survived well into the current age, although, as we did mention before, they are not so useful anymore, and they probably are disappearing, but some people want to save them because they are iconic. And, of course, tourists love to take selfies in front of them. Okay, so let's begin our lesson now by listening to the first part, and we'll come back to break it down for you.
For decades, these telephone boxes did their job, serving as an important means of communication for the people of Britain. With the rise of mobile phones over the last 30 years, though, they have become less and less needed. In 2021, only 21,000 of them remained in use, down from around 100,000 in 1990.
For decades, these telephone boxes did their job, serving as an important means of communication for the people of Britain. So after the telephone boxes were modified, for many years, for decades, they were very useful. They did their job. So when something does its job, it does what it was meant to do. And in the case of these telephone boxes, it was supposed to provide a means for people to communicate with each other. And because of these telephone boxes, people were able to do just that. So to communicate means to exchange information. And the process of doing that can be called communication. So communication is basically the process of exchanging information.
Right, so that's what they did. They served as an important way for people to communicate. If you needed to make a phone call to somebody and you wanted to tell them that you were going to be late for their afternoon function or whatever, you're going to be late having afternoon tea or whatever, then you could go to one of those phone boxes and make a telephone call to someone's house and tell them, oh, sorry, I can't make it. I'm going to be late. And indeed, they were an important means of communication for the people of Britain. And with the rise of mobile phones over the last 30 years, though, they have become less and less needed. So, yes, indeed, we've got mobile phones. They're called cell phones in the United States. And, of course, we've got the latest version of cell phones, which is the smartphone, which has a screen and you can go on the internet and stuff like that. The original cell phones could only be used for telephone conversations and to send text messages to each other. But nowadays, of course, people have their smartphones and they're communicating readily with other people. They don't need to stop and make a phone call from one of those telephone boxes.
Right. So over the last 30 years, mobile phones have become more and more popular, which means that these red telephone boxes became less needed. And in 2021, only 21,000 of them remained in use, down from around 100,000 in 1990. So over the arc of around 30 years, the number of these telephone boxes greatly diminished. There used to be around 100,000 all over the country, and today there are only around 21,000.
That's only about 1/5 of the phone boxes, the telephone boxes. And so some of them are standing around. They still exist, but of course that's a pretty small number. And it's probably only a matter of time before they totally disappear unless people do something to save them. So let's move on now to the second part and find out what's going to happen to those red telephone boxes.
Today, with the number of calls made from them falling dramatically, many of the remaining red phone boxes face removal too. However, their cultural significance has led to efforts to preserve them, The Adopt a Kiosk program, run by the phone company that owns the boxes, now allows local organizations to buy a red phone box for the cost of just £1 and put it to a different use. To date, over 6,500 of these old phone boxes have been repurposed as tiny libraries, art galleries, cake shops, first aid points, and even, in one case, a tiny nightclub.
大家好，第二部分我们看到名词 removal 指的是移除、消除或是搬迁。举例来说 Tiffany's yard looked much better after the removal of the dead tree. 在移除死掉的树之后 Tiffany 的花园看起来好多了。再举一个例子 Protesters called for the removal of the ex-president's statue. 抗议者要求拆除前总统的雕像。另外补充这个字的动词 remove R-E-M-O-V-E remove 意思是移除或是移开。例如 I need a strong laundry soap to remove the oil stain on my shirt. 我需要强力洗衣皂来去除我衬衫上的油渍。或者 Before entering the church, the man removed his hat. 在进教堂之前，那个男人摘下帽子。下一个我们看到名词 significance 意思是重要性或是意义。例如Our museum guide explained the artistic significance of the drawing. 我们的博物馆导览员解释了这幅画在艺术上的重要性。或是 Because of our unfamiliarity with local customs, the festival's cultural significance was lost on us. 由于我们不熟悉当地的风俗，因此无法了解这个节庆的意义。另外补充这个字的形容词 significant S-I-G-N-I-F-I-C-A-N-T significant它指的是重大的、重要的或是主要的、显著的。举例来说 Jenny's father had a significant influence on her choice of career. Jenny 的父亲在她的职涯选择上有重要的影响力。再举一个例子 There was a significant increase in our company's sales this week. 本周我们公司的销售有显著的上升。最后我们看到动词 repurpose 它的意思是重新利用或是改变点点点的用途改造。例如 The old train carriage has been repurposed into a quirky restaurant. 那个旧火车车厢被重新利用变成了一间特别的餐厅。又或者说 By remodeling the interiors, the city managed to repurpose its surplus shipping containers into low-cost housing. 借由内部改造，该市成功地将多余的货柜屋改造成低成本住宅。
Today, with the number of calls made from them falling dramatically, many of the remaining red phone boxes face removal too. So before we saw that the number of red phone boxes dropped significantly between 1990 and 2021. And this number may increase. We may have fewer and fewer telephone boxes because people just aren't making calls from them. And the number of calls made from them is falling dramatically as well. So when something falls dramatically, it means that it falls suddenly and very noticeably. It's not subtle. It's not something that people hardly notice. If something happens dramatically, you can see it, and you can see it right away.
Indeed. So, yes, the number of calls have fallen dramatically. They have fallen to a large degree. And so many of these remaining phone boxes face removal. So removal, of course, is the process of getting rid of something. Of course, if you've got these red telephone boxes sitting next to the street, some people will think, it takes time to maintain those red telephone boxes. You need to repaint them every once in a while because Britain has this kind of wet climate. So, of course, the paint is going to have to be handled in the future. So, yes, indeed, some people might think, well, it's just probably better to just get rid of them because people aren't really using them. These red boxes face removal. However, their cultural significance has led to efforts to preserve them. So again, they've got this cultural significance. Significance here is important. How significant or how important something is. And lots of people are thinking, boy, we just can't get rid of those red telephone boxes because they mean so much to the people of Britain. If we get rid of them, then the tourists won't want to come.
Right, so they have cultural meaning, these red telephone boxes. Just like if they decided to get rid of the double-decker buses one day, a lot of people protest because people might say, well, this is a symbol of London, so you can't get rid of that. It has significance. And here, the red phone boxes have cultural significance too. And because of this, efforts have been made to preserve them. When you preserve something, you take action to protect that thing or to keep it safe, to keep it going. I could say, for instance, that some people make an effort to preserve nature in order to keep nature from suffering from climate change or things that we do to harm the environment.
Right, so people want to maintain these red phone boxes. They want to preserve them, make sure they can continue to be used or seen in the future. And the Adopt a Kiosk program run by the phone company that owns the boxes now allows local organizations to buy a red phone box for the cost of just £1 and put it to a different use. So this is a special program called Adopt a Kiosk. And if you adopt something, of course, you bring it into your home. Usually as a child, you might adopt a child, for example, if that child is an orphan. But here, of course, people want to adopt a kiosk. A kiosk is similar to a phone box or a phone booth. It's a small room where you can make a phone call. Here in Taiwan, many years ago, there used to be kiosks at the sides of the roads that sold newspapers and magazines and bus tickets and things like that. They have long disappeared, but in this particular case, they want people to adopt a red phone box, and it will only cost you £1.
Yes, and this phrase, adopt a kiosk, is quite familiar, at least in the United States, because we have something similar called adopt a highway. So a lot of times you'll come across sections of highways that are really dirty because people tend to throw their garbage out the window and the garbage doesn't get cleaned up. So if you adopt a highway, you become partially responsible for maintaining or preserving that section of highway. And here, this program, Adopt a Kiosk, basically means somebody will be responsible partially for maintaining or preserving that phone booth, which has become a kiosk. Now, a kiosk is also something that you may come across as a tourist because a lot of tourist information centers are based in kiosks. They're just little spaces placed out in the public. There may be a small room or something shaped like a telephone booth, and there's someone in there with pamphlets and brochures, and you can ask them information.
Right, so of course people can buy a red phone box for just £1 and then they're going to put it to a different use. If you put something to use, that means you use it. It's usually something that's not being used at the moment. And then you start using it. Here, take this shovel and put it to good use. In other words, start digging with that shovel. You're not working now. You're kind of wasting time. So, yeah, put that shovel to good use. Start working. And indeed here, they can put the red phone box to a different use. They can figure out a way to repurpose it, which is in the next sentence. It says, to date, up to now, over 6,500 of these old phone boxes have been repurposed as tiny libraries, art galleries, cake shops, first aid points, and even in one case, a tiny nightclub. Gee, I wonder how many people can fit inside a nightclub that small. But yes, we're talking about repurposing things. That means you have something that is no longer useful, and instead of throwing it out, you try to figure out a different way to use it.
Right. And to date, these old phone boxes have been repurposed. So to date means up until now, up until this date. These phone boxes have found a new purpose. They're being used for something different. And what are they being used for? As libraries, as art galleries. Now, an art gallery is a place where works of art are displayed, and sometimes they can be sold as well to people who visit. So it's a place that has a permanent exhibition of works of art and also a first aid point. So these phone boxes have also been used as a place where people who are injured or hurt can go to get medical treatment as soon as possible instead of going to a hospital, or maybe they're bleeding, they just had some kind of accident and they need a Band-Aid. They can go to one of these kiosks and get first aid help.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson. Let's move on now to the third and final part.
Thanks to these clever ideas, at least some of Britain's red phone boxes are now likely to stick around. In spite of changing technology, they will remain a part of British culture, loved by locals and visitors alike for many years to come.
Thanks to these clever ideas, at least some of Britain's red phone boxes are now likely to stick around. So because of these clever ideas of turning the red phone boxes into other things, other services like first aid points and also libraries, so thanks to here means because of, as a result of these clever ideas, these phone boxes are now likely to stick around.
Right, so to stick around just means to stay in one place. Maybe you've invited a guest over to your house and they came over for dinner. They arrived at about 6 o'clock. They've already finished eating. It's now about 8 o'clock. And your guest says, well, I really need to get going. And you could say, oh, please stick around. Stay around for a while. We can have some nice conversation. We can play cards or have a game of cribbage or something like that. Yeah, stick around. Don't leave so quickly. And yes, of course, we're talking about these clever ideas of repurposing. So some of those red phone boxes are going to stick around. They're going to remain for some period of time because clever people have come up with clever ideas to repurpose them, to make them useful.
Yes, and in spite of changing technology, they will remain a part of British culture, loved by locals and visitors alike for many years to come. So in spite of here means regardless of, even though something happened, something else is still going to happen. So regardless of these changes in technology, because technology is constantly advancing and we don't need these public telephones anymore, these red telephone booths will still remain a part of British culture. They're not going anywhere, and they will remain items that are loved by locals, by British people, and visitors alike. So tourists can still go to Britain and admire and take photos of these phone boxes. And hopefully something like this or this situation will happen for many years to come. For many years to come basically means for many more years in the future.
Exactly. So they're going to be loved by locals and visitors alike. Here, alike just means both, except we put the word alike at the end of the sentence. We could say, hey, this outfit is loved by both men and women, or we could say this outfit is loved by women and men alike. They both like it. They can both wear it. And in this particular case, those red phone boxes are loved by locals, people from the UK. They like those red phone boxes, and visitors also like them. Of course, they're going to be popular locations to take photographs and selfies and things like that, and to be posted on social media. And yes, indeed, they're going to be around for many years to come in the future. Okay, let's finish up our lesson now by listening to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第3部分最后一句写到 In spite of changing technology, they will remain a part of British culture, loved by locals and visitors alike for many years to come. 尽管科技日新月异，他们仍然会是英国文化的一部分，并在未来几年受到当地居民和游客的喜爱。好，这边有几个重点。首先我们来看到 in spite of 或者是 despite， 表示尽管虽然，那它们是介系词，后面要接名词或动名词，像 they went fishing in spite of the rain， 尽管下雨他们还是去钓鱼。那特别注意，我们如果要在 despite 或者是 in spite of 后面接子句，不能直接接哦，这时候应该要先接一个名词同位语，像是 the fact， 然后才接 that 子句。所以在常见的句型就会是 despite the fact 或是 in spite of the fact 再加 that 子句。那刚刚的例句就可以改成 They went fishing despite the fact that it was raining， 或者是也可以就改用 though 或是 although 这些连接词来连接子句就好。好，第二个补充的重点是 remain 当连缀动词可以表达保持什么，或者是仍旧还是怎么样怎么样，后面可以接名词或形容词来当补语去说明状态，像文中就是在 remain 后面接名词 a part of British culture。好，那我们来造2个例句。 Please remain silent during the show， 在表演过程中请保持安静，所以 remain silent 就是保持安静。 The cause of his death remains a mystery. 它的死因仍然是个谜。这时候我们在 remain 后面加这个名词 a mystery 来表达仍然是个谜的意思。好，第三个补充的重点是 alike 当副词，它表示一样的、相似的。像有一句谚语说 Great minds think alike， 字面意思是聪明的人想的一样，那就是用来表达英雄所见略同。好，那当我们用 A and B alike 是指 A 和 B 一样。举例来说 The TV show is loved by children and adults alike. 那个电视节目小孩大人都爱。好，那最后一个补充的重点是文中它用 for many years to come， 这是表达未来几年。这边的 to come 是不定词片语，用来当形容词，表达说未来的、即将来临的。那常常会接在时间的后面，用来指未来的一段时间，像 for days to come 未来几天， for weeks to come 未来几周， for months to come 未来几个月等等。好啦，那以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单字吧。
Communication. For a team project to succeed, there should be clear and open communication among the team members. Removal. The removal of the old furniture made room for the more modern pieces Ron ordered online. Significance. Dr. Palmer's study clarifies the significance of religion in the ancient society. Preserve. Mr. Fleming uses special boxes and shelves to preserve the rare books he collects. Adopt. The environmental group has adopted a park and is now providing various resources to maintain its natural beauty. Gallery. In its new gallery, the museum plans to present a variety of special temporary exhibits.
Discussion Starter starts now!
Time now for our discussion starter. The question is, could you share an example of an iconic cultural symbol in the place you live and explain what it represents?
Well, I can explain a cultural symbol of a place where I used to live, which is New York. And in that case, an iconic cultural symbol is the coffee cup that you would get when you went to a coffee shop to buy coffee to go. The cup would be blue and white, and it would have the message, happy to serve you. And this cup also featured often in movies based in New York. So if you saw a cup like that, you knew that it came from a New York coffee shop.
Interesting. Well, of course, I live here in Taipei, so one iconic cultural symbol where I live here in Taiwan is the presence of convenience stores. My goodness, they're all over the place. You've got 7-Elevens, Family Marts, High Life, OK. They're all over the place. Indeed, that's an iconic cultural symbol of Taiwan and even more so of Japan.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Helen.
I am Roger.
See you next time.